What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I'm doing another top 5 video. This time I'm looking at my top 5 old Yu-Gi-Oh cards, old classic Yu-Gi-Oh cards that I would love to see get some sort of modern day version, whether it be a whole archetype to itself. We've seen examples of that over the last couple of years, whether it's just like a one-off retrain version. We've seen that coming in newest sets, one of which is a good example is Dragoon here that we'll talk about in a second. And that's pretty much it. I want to give you my 5 monsters, old classic monsters that I would love to see get some sort of modern day version. And I think this is a really fun topic because it seems so realistic. Like at some point, Konami seems to go back to all these classic awesome monsters from way back at the beginning of Yu-Gi-Oh! And say, for all the people that feel nostalgic, or some of these cards were anime cards, so anybody who was into the anime would definitely love to see a retrained version of this, and they go after it. So that's what we're doing today. Before we get into that, I want to talk about a couple of different things. First things first. This is very subjective, okay? I'm going to give you my 5 that I found. Keep in mind, this list could be so long. I mean, let's be honest. There could be over 100 monsters on this list that I think almost universally all the players would be like, yep, that's a classic card that could totally get a retrain. That one too, that one too, that one too, that one too. Like there's so many. So these are just my 5. If you see something on here that you think should be in here, definitely throw it down in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what other monsters you guys think deserve to be on the list. And I want to talk about some of the things we've seen as of recent. So first off, we had Dragoon here. I know this isn't a direct correlation here because it's like half Red Eyes, half Dark Magician. Keep in mind they were in the very first core set ever of Yu-Gi-Oh, so that's pretty classic. I know it's a combination, but still, it still has that feel to it where they just modernized one. They wanted to make something that was meta relevant, relevant to the competitive scene, but still have like that Dark Magician Red Eyes classic feel to it. So that's a good example. Next up is Thunder Dragon. This one makes a ton of sense as well. They took this card and they just literally went, hey, let's make a tier 1, not just tier 1, but the best deck in the game out of an old classic card like Thunder Dragon. So you've got like the Thunder Dragon Colossus and all that stuff, obviously. And then for like maybe like the newest example is Mahaviolo. They just went ahead and said, oh, Mahaviolo, a lot of people know that card. That's a classic card. A lot of people like that card when they were kids, playing equip spells, making a big Mahaviolo just off your normal summon. That's insane. And they made Light Sky Mahaviolo. This is a card, if you don't know, is already confirmed for Blazing Vortex, which comes out in, I don't know, 2.5 months now. So yeah, I mean, it's not good. This isn't an example of them trying to make something meta like Dragoon out of something like Dark Magician, but it is still a cool updated version. I'm sure some people want it just for that nostalgia factor of, you know, an old classic card that they remember like Mahaviolo. So from here, let's get into the top 5, okay? Number 5, Injection Fairy Lily. This card has multiple reasons why I think it deserves to be on the list. 1, anime power. This card was used in the anime in a very funny scene, matter of fact. 2, this card has waifu aspects to it, so I honestly could see them going in like an archetype route with this one. Is just say, yeah, let's make a Fairy Lily thing. So this is Injection Fairy Lily, something else Fairy Lily, whatever, and make it into a whole archetype. Unfortunately, this doesn't really ring me as one of the kind of cards that could just kind of fall into the archetype. Like Thunder Dragon can kind of work, like actually is a good card in Thunder Dragon because it is just a +1 straight up. But her effect is just strictly way outdated. So you probably have to retrain her and then make a whole archetype around it. Or if you just want to make a retrained version, like a cool, like just, you know, generic, cool, decent card off of her, I'd totally be into it. There's so many things here. Obviously, the waifu factor, the anime factor. In its day, it was a really scary monster that outed anything that was big or just pushed a ton of damage. Like, yeah, you take 2,000 damage, but if you're attacking direct, oh man, like you're just dealing 3,400. That's worth 1,400 like difference. Yeah. So definitely a very cool card, and I think this one definitely deserves to be on my list at least. Next up, we have Spirit Reaper. This one is interesting. A lot of people may disagree with this card because I think this card brings up some sour feelings of folks, especially way back in the day. I have some poor memories of this card, but I think those poor memories kind of feed into why I wanted it on this list. A good friend of mine that I still sometimes play Yu-Gi-Oh with, JT, my boy, would play like a bad zombie deck, albeit, but it had things like Spirit Reaper in it. And especially back in the day where outs to something like Spirit Reaper were limited and there's no searching them. You just kind of had to hard draw into them. This card could be insanely annoying. You could be in the full driver's seat in a duel, and then your opponent sets a Spirit Reaper, and now you're just sitting there like, oh. Not only that, but even like not only be using defensively like that, but even when it was being used offensively, it would still rip cards out of your hand, which also makes people salty, even to this day, right? So I think this card could be a classic card where it's like, if they made a generic version, I don't think an archetype really makes sense for this card, but if they made a new retrained generic version of a card that could just jump on the field, it's unaffected by something, and like maybe has some battle protection, something really annoying to get around, right? Just protection effects, and it's just a wall, but a legitimate power creep wall that, like, you look at it today's standards, you're like, wow, that's a really annoying to get around. Like maybe can't be targeted, can't be destroyed, and maybe just give it a really big booty. So like getting over it's hard. And then you have to have like non-targeting, non-destruction removal for it. Like that could actually be a thing for like control strategies for sure. Or maybe a hand trap that could jump on the field at any time. Like I could see a whole lot of ways they could go for this. My sour feelings for this card kind of fed into why I wanted him on this list. I just had strong feelings for him one way or the other. And listen, not everybody's going to love every Yu-Gi-Oh card. And if they made a retrain of this card and it was some kind of like meta type, like generic card that could be played, most people probably hate it, but I love it just because I have those memories of Spirit Reaper like that, and they're like funny to laugh at now. So Spirit Reaper, number 4 on the list. Let's go to number 3, Tsukuyomi. This one is huge. I mean, this card arguably could be the number 1 card that like represents all of GOAT format. If you were to pick one single card, this could be it. There's probably arguments for a couple others. I'm not saying that 100% this is it, but it definitely would be in the argument to say Tsukuyomi and GOAT is insane. It's one of the best cards in the entire format. I agree. But I think it's a cool card. We've already seen spirits get retrained, so I'm not talking about spirits specifically, but maybe if you wanted to make a generic card like Tsukuyomi, but maybe power creep it a little bit, I don't even think it's a terrible card for today's standards. The only thing is it uses your normal summon, right? Booking's not a bad thing. But what if they made a spirit version of this card that could like special summon itself, like as a quick effect, then book something? I mean, we've seen how good something like Fairy Tale Snow can be, right? What if we got some kind of hand trap variant of Tsukuyomi that summons itself, books something, and then if it lives till the end phase, jumps back into the hand, it could be used again. Now, maybe that might be a little bit insane. Maybe you need some specific requirements you have to meet to set it up, but you know, like I could see something really cool happening there. But like something that still could be good. I mean, booking things are just good. They can't be used as materials, so they're not really extenders anymore. You just neutralize it. You're not putting stuff in grave, which can then become resources later on, or float or anything. You're booking them, which is a little bit better than those in a lot of instances. So I think Su could be a really cool card here. I just think it symbolizes one of the most beloved formats competitively that we've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and I think that made me really want to put it on this slot. Plus, I've been doing the progression series. I'm still playing it, and we're like 7 sets past when GOAT was now, and I'm still playing this card in my deck because I still think it's that good in the format. It's still really solid. So Tsukuyomi, number 3 on my list. Over to number 2. Another GOAT format staple, Magician of Faith, man. This card is awesome in the GOAT format specifically, and other older formats like that. This card is really, really strong, especially in things like when Pedigree was still at 1, Graceful Charity was at 1, and you could loop those kinds of cards. Whoo-wee, this card's insane. You know, just looping those kinds of cards. The problem now, obviously, she's too slow. You can't have a flip effect with an effect like this, but when it resolves, it's still not bad. Any spell from grave, that's no joke, right? So I think if they could do some sort of modern day Magician of Faith, either retrain or archetype, like obviously based around spells, but like maybe constantly trying to recur some spells, but you don't make them too busted, that kind of thing. I could see something kind of along the same vein as like Witchcrafters, how they kind of recur spells, but maybe the monsters get you the spells back instead of the spells recurring themselves, but kind of slow. I could see something like that. Or if they just want to make a generic version, they'd have to be very, very careful, because just looping spells, like, that can be very scary, because we have older spells that are not hard once per turns. And so just being able to like loop those back from grave, like generically any spell, could be kind of tough. So obviously they need to be careful on how they went about, you know, making the card work. But what if it was something like, you know, when this card's normal summoned, add a spell from from your graveyard to your hand. It's not insane, but it is, like, you know, still kind of nice. So I don't know. There's definitely a lot of routes. There's a lot of gray area and how exactly they could go about making this card work for, like, you know, a retrain work for like modern day Yu-Gi-Oh. But I think they could do it. They could do it for any of these, to be honest, because they can do whatever they want. They're Konami, right? But I think Magician of Faith, another card that would be really, really cool to see get a modern day version. Which takes us to our number one on the list, Breaker the Magical Warrior. This is one of my favorite cards of all time as a kid. This was like one of my favorite cards. It's insane. For the time, a 1900 beater normal summon was insane. Combine that with the fact that it was like the only monster in like all of the game by the time like when it came out that actually like removed back row like at all, at least efficiently. There might have been some other ones that are like meh, but not that good. And that was insane to me. Not only that, his design is so clean, and he was played in the anime. There's like so many reasons why Breaker is like super, super dope. And so I think because of that, a lot of people like this card. I think this is just a fan favorite card generically. So I think Konami could do a couple things here. They could obviously continue with the spellcaster, spell counter kind of support. We've seen the Endymion stuff. We've seen a fair amount of cards nowadays go with the spell counters, or just counters in general. So if they wanted to like delve back into that and kind of do another facet of that, maybe stray away from pendulums a little bit and go with some regular like archetype that does still use spell counters, but try to make them pretty efficient with them and not make them like, you give them useless cards like spells that just give spell counter and that's all they do. Like actually do things like Spell Power Mastery is really good. That would be really cool. And then obviously you want to retrain Breaker. That would be really awesome. Maybe give him like a quick effect to pop back row, and that's just like a piece of the archetype, so like helps you versus like you know, decks that do play back row and have that removal, and then also have other things. Like that would be so clean. I think design, it was meta at the time. It's an anime card. It did a specific thing that like no other card at the time did. It's so cool. And I pulled it in the progression series, so I've had a blast using it. It doesn't actually resolve as much as I'd love it to, but you know, when it does resolve, it feels amazing. So, yeah, Breaker the Magic Warrior. You know, fuck with it. Alright guys, but that's going to do it for me here today. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you saw something in your brain or thought of something in your head that you didn't see here that you thought would be an awesome idea for this, throw it in the comment section down below. I want to hear everything you guys have to say about this, because there's so many, like I said, there's so many different monsters that could fit this mold of like, oh my god, that would be an awesome card to get a modern day version of. That would be so freaking cool. So yeah. That's going to do it for me here. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more discussion videos like this one in the future. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.